The shuttle descended through clouds that glowed purple in the light of 3 distant suns. Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole watched through the small window as the Sara Prime came into view below. The planet was beautiful in the way that expensive things are. Beautiful, clean, organized, perfect. Marcus had seen the recruitment videos for the Confederation Military Academy. Every human who applied had seen them. The videos showed aliens from 40 different species training together. They showed massive lecture halls carved from crystal. They showed simulation chambers that could recreate any battle in galactic history. They showed the future of interstellar cooperation. What the videos did not show was the look on alien faces when they learned a human was coming to teach. The shuttle touched down on a landing pad made of something that looked like polished bone. Marcus grabbed his single bag and walked down the ramp. The air smelled like flowers and copper. A tall figure waited for him at the edge of the pad. The alien was Thesan. They were the host species here, the ones who had built this academy 3,000 years before humans learned to make fire. This one stood nearly 7 feet tall with skin the color of pale silver. Its eyes were large and dark, and they studied Marcus the way a scientist might study an interesting insect. "Staff Sergeant Cole," the Thesan said. Its voice was musical, each word carrying multiple tones. "I am Senior Instructor Thelvan. I will be your supervisor during your exchange assignment." Marcus saluted. The gesture felt strange here, under alien suns, but it was what he knew. "Thank you for the opportunity, Senior Instructor." Thelvan did not return the salute. Thesans did not salute. They performed a slight bow that somehow managed to look like they were doing you a favor by acknowledging your existence. "Come," Thelvan said. "I will show you to your quarters. Tomorrow you will meet your students." They walked through hallways that seemed to flow rather than turn. Everything on the Sara Prime was curved and smooth. No sharp angles. No harsh edges. Marcus felt like a rough stone in a jewelry box. "Your species is new to the Confederation," Thelvan said as they walked. It was not a question. 47 years since first contact," Marcus replied. 31 years since we joined. A brief time. Thelvan's voice carried something that might have been amusement. "The Korath have been members for 6,000 years. The Velthari for 12,000. We Thesans founded the Confederation itself." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. Thelvan was stating facts. Humans were the newcomers. The children at the adult table. They reached his quarters. The room was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The bed was shaped like a curved shell, and the walls displayed slowly moving images of Thesan landscapes. "You will find the facilities adequate, I hope," Thelvan said. "Your teaching materials have been uploaded to the local network. You will instruct a mixed cohort of 30 students from 8 species. I'm honored." Thelvan's dark eyes studied him again. "You are the first human to teach at this academy, Staff Sergeant. Many of my colleagues questioned whether your species was ready for such responsibility. Your military history is chaotic, violent, brief." Marcus met those dark eyes without flinching. "We learn fast, so we have observed." Thelvan moved toward the door. "The Academy's doctrine emphasizes proportional response, measured force, elegant solutions to tactical problems. We do not reward excess here. We do not celebrate waste. I understand. Do you?" Thelvan paused at the doorway. "Your species has a reputation. Staff Sergeant Cole, humans are known for many things among the Confederation worlds. Your creativity, your adaptability, your stubbornness." The Thesan's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "And your tendency toward what we call overkill." Marcus kept his face neutral. "I'm familiar with the term." "I'm sure you are. Get some rest. Tomorrow you will need to prove that humanity deserves its seat at this table." The door closed behind Thelvan with a soft whisper. Marcus stood alone in the beautiful alien room and allowed himself a small smile. He had been warned that the aliens would underestimate him. His commanders back on Earth had prepared him for this. They had told him to be patient, to observe, to learn, and when the time came, to teach. The next morning, Marcus entered a lecture hall that could have held 500 students. Only 30 seats were filled, but those 30 students represented 8 different species, and every single one of them turned to stare as he walked to the front of the room. The Velthari were the most numerous. There were 12 of them, insectoid beings with compound eyes and 4 arms each. They were famous throughout the Confederation for their mathematical minds. They calculated everything. They never guessed. They never estimated. They knew. 6 Korath sat in reinforced seats near the back. They were massive reptilian creatures, each one weighing at least 400 pounds. Their scales were thick enough to stop small caliber rounds, and their teeth were designed for tearing meat. But despite their fearsome appearance, the Korath followed a strict code of honor. They believed in meeting strength with equal strength, no more and no less. The remaining students were a mix of other species. 4 Thesans sat together near the front, their silver faces arranged in expressions of polite curiosity. There were also 2 Melkori, small furry creatures with 6 legs and excellent night vision. 3 Vraks, who looked like floating jellyfish, but were actually brilliant tacticians. And 3 humans. Marcus looked at the human students. 2 women and 1 man, all wearing the same gray academy uniforms as everyone else. They watched him with a mixture of hope and nervousness. They were counting on him. Every human in the Confederation was counting on him. "Good morning," Marcus said. His voice was calm and steady. "I'm Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole, United Earth Marine Corps. For the next 6 months, I'll be teaching you tactical theory and application." A Velthari near the front raised one of its 4 arms. "Staff Sergeant, what qualifications do you possess? Your species has only achieved interstellar travel within living memory. What can you teach us that we do not already know?" Marcus had expected this question. He had prepared for it during the long journey from Earth. "That's fair," he said. "You're right that humanity is new to space. We've only been traveling between stars for about 80 years. In that time, we fought exactly 3 wars. The Proxima Rebellion, the Belt Conflicts, and the Rethven Incident. Minor skirmishes," another Velthari said. "The Korath have fought in 237 major conflicts. The Thesans have managed galactic peacekeeping operations for millennia." "You're absolutely right," Marcus said. "We don't have your experience. We don't have your history. We're the new kids, and we know it." The students seemed surprised by his agreement. They had expected him to defend humanity, to argue for human exceptionalism. Instead, he was agreeing with their assessment. "So what I'm going to teach you," Marcus continued, "is not about what we know. It's about how we think. It's about the philosophy that guides our military operations. It's about the one thing we've learned from our very short, very violent history." "And what is that?" A Korath rumbled from the back of the room. Marcus smiled. "How not to lose." The lesson began. Marcus taught them about basic tactical formations, about supply lines and communication networks. He kept things simple at first, foundational concepts that any military academy would cover. The students were attentive, but not impressed. They had learned all of this before. During a break, one of the Korath approached him. The creature was enormous up close, towering over Marcus by at least 2 feet. Its eyes were golden slits, and its breath smelled like sulfur. "I am Gresh," the Korath said. "I have studied human military history. You interest me. I'm flattered. Your species has never been conquered. Every human colony that has been attacked has been recovered. Every enemy that has struck at your worlds has been destroyed. Gresh's eyes narrowed. Yet you stand there and speak of being new, of learning. You pretend to be humble. Marcus looked up at the massive alien. Who says I'm pretending? Gresh made a sound that might have been a laugh. I do not know yet, human, but I intend to find out. The weeks passed. Marcus taught his classes, observed his students, and learned everything he could about how other species approached warfare. He watched the Velthari calculate engagement probabilities down to the 4th decimal place. He watched the Korath practice ritual combat with honor rules that made chess look simple. He watched the Thesans discuss the philosophy of proportional response, the idea that force should always match the threat, never exceed it. Thelvan observed several of his classes. The senior instructor never commented, never asked questions. He simply watched with those dark, knowing eyes. One evening, Thelvan summoned Marcus to his office. The room was filled with artifacts from 100 worlds, trophies from 1,000 years of Thesan diplomatic history. You have been here for 8 weeks, Thelvan said. Your students are performing adequately. Your lessons are competent. Thank you. That was not entirely a compliment. Thelvan gestured to a chair. Marcus sat. You are holding back, Staff Sergeant. You teach the basics, but you never reveal anything of true human doctrine. Why? Marcus considered his answer carefully. I'm still learning how you do things here. The weeks before the final exercise passed quickly. Marcus continued to teach his classes, continued to observe, continued to learn. But now he was also preparing. Every night, after his duties were complete, he worked on his presentation. He made requests through secure channels back to Earth. He called in favors from old friends in military intelligence. He waited for answers that took too long to arrive. Gresh continued to seek him out. The massive Korath had developed what could only be called a friendship with the human instructor, though neither of them would have used that word. You are quieter lately, Gresh observed one evening. They were sitting in the Academy's observation lounge, watching ships come and go from the orbital station above the Sara Prime. You are preparing something. Just working on my presentation, Marcus said. Senior Instructor Thelvan wants me to talk about Overkill. Gresh made a rumbling sound deep in his chest. Overkill. An interesting concept. The Korath have a similar word. We call it shame force. It means using more strength than your enemy deserves. It dishonors both the victor and the defeated. We have a different word for it. What word? Marcus watched a cargo ship drift slowly toward the station. Its running lights blinked in the darkness like distant stars. Insurance, he said. Gresh considered this. I do not understand. I know. Marcus stood up. But you will. The day of the presentations arrived. The Academy's grand amphitheater was built to hold 3,000 beings. And for the first time in decades, it was completely full. Word had spread about the human instructor's unusual request. Every student, every instructor, every administrator who could find an excuse to attend had come. Thelvan had not expected this. He stood at the front of the amphitheater, looking out at the sea of alien faces, and felt something he had not felt in centuries: uncertainty. The presentations began with the Velthari. Their senior instructor was a being named Chelrix, whose compound eyes could process visual information faster than any computer. Chelrix presented the Velthari concept of optimal engagement, a doctrine that treated warfare as a mathematical equation. Every battle could be calculated. Every outcome could be predicted. The key was to use exactly the right amount of force, not 1 unit more, not 1 unit less. The simulation displayed on the amphitheater's massive screens showed a Velthari fleet engaging a pirate squadron. The Velthari ships moved with perfect precision. They fired exactly the number of shots needed to disable each enemy vessel. Not a single weapon charge was wasted. Not a single crew member was put at unnecessary risk. Efficiency, Chelrix concluded, is the highest virtue. Waste is the enemy of victory. The audience applauded politely. The Valkyrie students clicked their mandibles in appreciation. Next came the chorus. Gresh's instructor, a scarred veteran named Thornback, presented the concept of honor match. The chorus believed that every enemy deserved to be met with equal force. To use more was shameful. To use less was insulting. The simulation showed a Korath warship facing an enemy of similar size and power. The two ships circled each other, testing, probing. Then they engaged in direct combat, neither side holding back, neither side escalating beyond what the other could match. Honor, Thornback growled, is found in the balance. We do not crush those weaker than us. We do not flee from those stronger. We meet each challenge with exactly what it deserves. More applause. The Korath students stomped their feet in approval, making the floor shake. Finally, Thelvan himself presented the Thesan philosophy of proportional response. This was the doctrine that the Confederation itself was built upon. The idea that force should always be measured, always controlled, always appropriate to the threat faced. We are not warriors by nature, Thelvan said, his musical voice filling the amphitheater. We are philosophers, diplomats, peacekeepers. When we must use force, we use only what is necessary to restore balance. More than that is waste. More than that is brutality. The simulation showed a Thesan peacekeeping force responding to a border conflict. They used precise, limited strikes to disable key military targets. They avoided civilian casualties with careful planning. They brought the conflict to an end with minimal destruction on either side. This, Thelvan concluded, is the art of measured force. This is the way of civilization. The applause was thunderous. The Thesan students raised their hands in their species' gesture of deep respect. Thelvan allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. Then he turned to Marcus, who had been sitting quietly in the front row throughout all the presentations. And now, Thelvan said, we come to our guest instructor, Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole of the United Earth Marine Corps, the first human to teach at this academy. The amphitheater fell silent. 3,000 pairs of eyes, some compound, some lidless, some glowing with internal fire, all focused on the human. Staff Sergeant Cole will present the human concept of overkill. Thelvan's voice carried the slightest hint of mockery. He will show us what happens when a species lacks the discipline for proportional response. When they use more force than necessary. When they waste resources and lives in excessive displays of violence. Thelvan gestured to the presentation platform. Please, Staff Sergeant, educate us. Marcus stood. He was wearing his formal Marine Corps uniform, the one with all his medals and ribbons. He walked slowly to the platform, taking his time, feeling the weight of 3,000 stairs. Senior Instructor Thelvan asked me for one example of overkill, Marcus said. His voice was calm, almost casual. I thought about this for a long time. One example. Just one. How do you choose? He smiled, and something in that smile made several of the closer students shift uncomfortably in their seats. So I decided not to choose. I decided to show you the most recent example from our declassified records. An operation that happened 30 years ago. An operation called Blackstone. He pressed a control, and the massive screens lit up with an image of space. Stars glittered in the void. A small blue-green planet hung in the distance. This is Meridian 4, Marcus said. 30 years ago, it was a human colony world. Population, 12,000. Mostly families, scientists, farmers, teachers, Regular people trying to build a life on a new world. The image changed to show a fleet of ships. The vessels were ugly, practical things, covered in weapons and armor. This is the Rethven Consortium. You might not know the name. They don't exist anymore. Marcus let that statement hang in the air. 30 years ago, they were a pirate nation. 300 ships. 40,000 fighters. They made their living by raiding colony worlds, taking hostages, demanding ransoms. Another image. This one showed the Consortium fleet in orbit above Meridian 4. They decided to target Meridian 4. They thought it would be an easy score. Small colony. Far from Earth. Limited defenses. Marcus's voice hardened. They were wrong. The next image made several students gasp. It showed bodies. Human bodies. Men, women, and children, laid out in rows on a blood-stained floor. The Consortium took the entire colony hostage. 12,000 people. And to prove they were serious, they executed 200 of them. They broadcast the executions across all human channels. They demanded that Earth surrender 3-star systems, or they would kill everyone. Silence. Absolute silence. Now, Marcus said, I want you to think about how your species would have responded. The Valkyrie would have calculated the optimal response. Send enough ships to defeat the Consortium fleet. Minimize losses. Achieve the objective efficiently. He looked at Chorix. How many ships would that be? 300 enemy vessels, plus ground forces. Maybe 400 ships from your fleet? 500 to be safe? Chelrix's compound eyes glittered. Approximately. Depending on the specific capabilities involved. The Korath would honor match them. Meet their strength with equal strength. 300 ships for 300 ships. Thornback growled in agreement. The Thesans would seek a proportional response. Enough force to neutralize the threat without excessive violence. Perhaps a smaller fleet, combined with negotiation. Thalvan nodded slowly. Marcus smiled again. That same unsettling smile. You asked for an example of overkill. You asked what humans do when they don't restrain themselves. He pressed another control. We sent 4 carrier battle groups. 1,200 warships. The largest deployment of human military force since the Belt conflicts. The screens lit up with images of the human response fleet. Ship after ship after ship, each one bristling with weapons, each one carrying enough firepower to devastate a small moon. We sent 12,000 Marines, one for every civilian being held hostage. More images. Dropships. Landing craft. Armored assault vehicles. We sent medical ships. Hospital vessels. Trauma counselors. Psychiatrists. Priests. Rabbis. Imams. Counselors for every faith and no faith at all. The images continued. Support vessels. Supply ships. Engineering platforms. We sent construction crews, architects, city planners, agricultural specialists. Everything needed to rebuild the colony from scratch if necessary. Marcus paused. He looked out at the 3,000 faces staring at him in shock. The Consortium had 300 ships. We sent 1,200. They had 40,000 fighters. We sent 90,000. They wanted 3-star systems. We came to take everything from them. He pressed the control one more time. And now I'm going to show you what the footage was recorded from 17 different sources. Combat cameras mounted on warships. Helmet feeds from marine assault teams. Orbital observation platforms that captured every moment of what happened next. Marcus stood to one side of the screens, his hands clasped behind his back, his face expressionless. He let the footage speak for itself. The first images showed the human fleet emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Meridian system. 1,200 ships materialized out of the darkness in perfect formation. 4 carrier battle groups, each one commanded by a flag officer with orders signed by Earth's highest military authority. The consortium detected our arrival within seconds, Marcus said quietly. They sent a message to our command ship. They said, if we came any closer, they would begin executing hostages. 1 every minute until we withdrew. The footage showed the consortium fleet moving into a defensive formation around Meridian 4. Their ships were older, smaller, less advanced than the human vessels. But they had hostages. They had leverage. They had done this before. Our response was simple, Marcus continued. We told them they had 30 minutes to release every hostage unharmed, or we would kill every single one of them. A Valkyrie student in the 3rd row raised one arm. That was a bluff. You could not attack while they held hostages. The risk of civilian casualties would be too high. Marcus looked at the student. His eyes were cold. Who said anything about a bluff? The footage continued. The human fleet did not stop at the edge of the system. It did not wait for negotiations. It did not send diplomats to discuss terms. It advanced. The 1,200 ships moved as one, a wall of steel and fire sweeping toward the pirate fleet. The consortium began executing hostages immediately. The footage showed them broadcasting the killings on all channels, trying to force the humans to stop. The humans did not stop. In the first 5 minutes, Marcus said, the consortium killed 47 hostages. They thought we would break. They thought we would negotiate. On screen, the first human ships entered weapons range. The carrier battle groups deployed their fighter squadrons, thousands of small attack craft swarming out of their launch bays like angry insects. We didn't. The battle began. It was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was an execution. The human ships opened fire with everything they had: missiles, energy weapons, kinetic projectiles. The barrage was so intense that the consortium's defensive systems were overwhelmed in seconds. Their ships began to explode, one after another, like a string of firecrackers going off in the darkness of space. The consortium fleet was destroyed in 18 minutes, Marcus said. We didn't offer them surrender. We didn't take prisoners. They killed our civilians, so we killed them. All of them. The footage showed escape pods launching from damaged consortium ships. Human fighters intercepted them. The screens lit up with explosion after explosion. We didn't let any of them escape. Not one. Every pirate who participated in the attack on Meridian 4 died in that system. In the amphitheater, someone was making a sound. It took Marcus a moment to realize it was a thesis student crying. But the space battle was just the beginning, Marcus continued. The real overkill was what came next. The footage shifted to show the planet's surface. The consortium had taken over the colony's main settlement, turning it into a fortress. They still held thousands of hostages. They still had 40,000 ground troops. Standard doctrine for hostage rescue is to move carefully. Secure perimeters. Negotiate when possible. Minimize risk to hostages. Marcus's voice was flat, mechanical. We didn't do any of that. The orbital bombardment began. But it wasn't an indiscriminate strike. The footage showed precision weapons hitting exact targets. Power generators. Communication towers. Vehicle depots. Weapons storage facilities. Every piece of infrastructure the consortium needed to maintain control was destroyed in a single coordinated strike. We hit them from orbit, from the air, and from the ground simultaneously. We didn't give them time to think. We didn't give them time to react. We didn't give them time to hurt anyone else. The marine assault began. The footage showed drop pods falling from the sky like metal rain. Thousands of them, each one carrying a team of heavily armed soldiers. They landed everywhere at once. On rooftops, in streets, in fields outside the settlement. There was no single point of attack. There was no front line. The Marines were simply everywhere. We breached the main holding facility from 47 different entry points at the exact same moment. Every door, every window, every wall that could be cut through. We came in from everywhere at once. The combat footage was brutal. Marines moving through corridors, eliminating consortium troops with ruthless efficiency. No warning shots. No calls to surrender. Just precise, lethal violence that swept through the building like a wave. The ground operation took 11 minutes from first breach to last shot fired. We killed 19,000 consortium troops. We lost 12 Marines. A Kara student spoke up from the back of the amphitheater. Those numbers cannot be correct. The consortium had fortified positions. They had hostages. They had every advantage. They had numbers, Marcus agreed. We had everything else. Better training, better equipment, better intelligence, and we were very, very angry. He let those words sink in. But here's the part that you need to understand. Here's the part that makes this overkill, and not just overwhelming force. The footage changed again. It showed the aftermath of the assault. Marines moving through the settlement, not searching for enemies, not securing positions, helping survivors. We sent 12,000 Marines, one for every hostage. That wasn't a coincidence. That was the plan. The images showed Marines carrying wounded civilians, Marines distributing medical supplies, Marines setting up field hospitals and emergency shelters. Every Marine was assigned a specific civilian to locate and protect. They had photos, names, family histories, medical records. They knew everything about the people they were there to save. One image showed a Marine cradling a small child, the soldier's armored hands impossibly gentle as he checked the child for injuries. The fighting was over in 11 minutes. The rescue operation went on for 72 hours. We didn't stop until every single hostage was accounted for. How many did you save? Gresh asked from his seat near the back. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. Marcus was silent for a moment. 11,753. We lost 247. The consortium killed 200 during the initial takeover and 47 during our approach. We saved everyone else. He looked out at the audience, meeting as many eyes as he could. That's overkill. We sent 1,000 more ships than we needed. We sent thousands more troops than we needed. We sent doctors and counselors and engineers and construction workers that we shouldn't have needed at all. His voice rose slightly, because we don't calculate minimum necessary force. We calculate maximum acceptable loss. And the maximum acceptable loss was 0. We didn't achieve that. We lost 247 people, and every one of those deaths haunts everyone who was there. But we came as close as we could. We came as close as anyone could. Delvan stood slowly. His silver face was unreadable. This is not what I expected, he admitted. But it is still excess. You sent far more than was necessary. You wasted resources that could have been used elsewhere. Marcus looked at the senior instructor. Did we? He asked. Let me show you what happened next. He pressed the control again, because the assault wasn't the end of Operation Blackstone. It was just the beginning. The footage continued, and 3,000 beings learned that they didn't understand humans at all. The footage showed the days after the assault. The colony of Meridian 4 had been devastated. Buildings were damaged from the fighting. Infrastructure was destroyed. The people who had been held hostage for weeks were traumatized, afraid, and grieving for the 247 who had not survived. Most military operations would have ended there. The threat was eliminated. The hostages were rescued. Victory was achieved. But the human fleet did not leave. "This is what I want you to understand," Marcus said quietly. "The ships we brought, the people we brought, the resources we brought, they weren't all for the fighting. They weren't all for the rescue." The footage showed transport ships landing outside the ruined settlement. Massive cargo vessels carrying construction equipment, medical supplies, food, water, temporary housing. Thousands of personnel in non-combat uniforms began deploying across the colony. We sent construction engineers, city planners, architects, agricultural specialists, water treatment experts, power grid technicians. Every kind of specialist you need to rebuild a civilization from the ground up. On screen, the rebuilding began almost immediately. Even as the last of the bodies were being collected, even as the wounded were being treated, the work of restoration was starting. The extra ships that Thilvan called waste? They were supply vessels. They carried enough materials to rebuild the entire colony twice over. Because we weren't sure how much damage there would be. We didn't know what we would find when we got there. So we brought everything. A Valkyrie instructor near the front spoke up. "This is inefficient. You could have assessed the damage first, then sent only what was needed. And how long would that take?" Marcus asked. "A few days to assess. A few weeks to requisition supplies. A few months to ship them from Earth. Meanwhile, 11,000 people are living in the ruins of their homes, wondering if anyone cares about them." He gestured to the screens. "We didn't make them wait. We brought it all with us. Because the message we were sending wasn't just to the consortium. It was to our own people. It was to those 11,000 survivors." The footage showed a middle-aged woman in civilian clothes standing in front of a half-destroyed building. She was speaking to a camera, tears streaming down her face. "They came for us," she said. "They came with everything. Not just soldiers, doctors, teachers, builders. They came to bring us home." Marcus let the clip play out before continuing. Within 1 week, temporary housing was established for every survivor. Within 1 month, the power grid was fully restored. Within 3 months, the colony had better infrastructure than it had before the attack. More footage. Buildings rising from rubble. Children going back to school in temporary classrooms. Farmers returning to their fields with new equipment and new seeds. But we didn't stop there. The screen showed the same colony, but the time stamp had jumped forward. 1 year after the attack. The original colony of Meridian 4 had 12,000 people. Basic facilities. A small economy based on agriculture and light manufacturing. It was a modest settlement on the edge of human space. The footage panned across a city that looked nothing like the original colony. Tall buildings. Modern hospitals. Research centers. A spaceport that could handle passenger liners and cargo ships. 1 year later, Meridian 4 had a population of 40,000. It had become a regional hub for that entire sector. It had schools, hospitals, cultural centers, everything a growing community needs. "You rebuilt it bigger than before," Gresh observed. "Why?" 2 reasons. Marcus held up one finger. First, because we wanted the survivors to know that we didn't just care about saving them. We cared about their future. We cared about their children's future. We wanted them to have a home that was worth coming back to. He held up a second finger. Second, because we wanted everyone watching to know what happens when you attack a human colony. The footage changed again. It showed news broadcasts from other worlds. Alien reporters standing in front of images of Meridian 4, discussing what the humans had done. "We didn't just destroy the consortium," Marcus said. "We annihilated them. Every ship, every base, every record of their existence." In the months after Meridian 4, human forces tracked down every surviving consortium member across 8 different systems. We didn't negotiate. We didn't accept surrenders. We hunted them until there was nothing left. His voice was hard. The Rethven Consortium killed 200 of our people. In response, we killed all 40,000 of theirs, destroyed their entire nation, and erased their name from history. Then we rebuilt our colony into something better than it was before. Silence in the amphitheater. That's overkill, Marcus said. Not the number of ships. Not the number of soldiers. The message. The absolute, unmistakable message that attacking human civilians is not just expensive or dangerous. It is extinction. We will spend any amount of money. We will deploy any number of forces. We will take as long as necessary. And when we are done, there will be nothing left of you but a warning to others. A young Thesan student in the front row raised a trembling hand. Is this not immoral? To kill so many in response to the deaths of a few hundred? Marcus looked at the student. His expression softened slightly. You're asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether it was moral to kill the consortium. The question is what happened after. He pressed a control, and the screens displayed a chart. It showed attacks on human colonies over time. Before Operation Blackstone, there were several attacks per year. After Blackstone, the line dropped sharply and then flattened. In the 30 years since Meridian 4, there have been exactly 0 attacks on human civilian populations. 0. Not by pirates. Not by hostile nations. Not by anyone. He let that sink in. Every species in this galaxy knows what happened to the Rethven Consortium. Every species knows what will happen if they touch our civilians. The message was received. But the cost, Thelvan said. The resources you spent. The lives you took. Surely there was a better way. Was there? Marcus turned to face the senior instructor. How many Thesan civilians have died in attacks over the last 30 years? Thelvan was silent. I don't know the exact number either, Marcus continued. But I know it's not 0. I know that proportional response doesn't stop future attacks. I know that measured force doesn't prevent the next massacre. He stepped closer to Thelvan. We don't use overkill because we enjoy it. We don't use it because we're undisciplined or wasteful or excessive. We use it because it works. We use it because our civilians sleep safely at night knowing that if anyone ever hurts them, the response will be overwhelming, unstoppable, final. The amphitheater was completely silent. 3,000 beings sat in their seats, staring at the human who had just shown them something they never expected to see. You asked me to present a flaw, Marcus said, turning back to face the crowd. I didn't. I presented a philosophy. A philosophy that says our people matter more than efficiency. That says protection matters more than proportionality. That says we will pay any price, bear any burden, spend any amount of treasure to bring our people home and make sure no one ever tries to take them again. He walked slowly back to the center of the stage. Overkill isn't our flaw. It's our promise. It's the promise we make to every human being on every colony world in every system. We will not calculate minimum necessary force. We will not measure our response against some abstract standard of proportionality. His voice rose. We will come with everything we have. And we will not stop until it is finished. The footage ended. The screens went dark. Marcus stood alone on the stage, looking out at an audience that no longer knew what to think. Thelvan rose slowly from his seat. His silver face was troubled, his dark eyes deep with thought. I asked you to show us human excess, he said. Instead, you showed us human love, human fear, human determination. They're all the same thing, Marcus replied. We love our people, so we fear losing them, so we do whatever it takes to keep them safe. Everything we did at Meridian 4 came from that. The amphitheater remained silent as Marcus walked back to his seat. No one applauded. No one spoke. They were all still trying to understand what they had just witnessed. And in the back of the room, Gresh the Karath sat very still, thinking about everything he had learned about humans. They were not excessive. They were not undisciplined. They were not wasteful. They were terrifying. And they were the best friends anyone could ever have. The amphitheater emptied slowly. 3,000 beings filed out in near silence, each one lost in their own thoughts about what they had just seen. The footage from Meridian 4 had changed something. It had broken assumptions that many of them had held for their entire lives. Marcus remained in his seat until nearly everyone was gone. He was tired. The presentation had taken more out of him than he had expected. Talking about Blackstone always did that. He had been there, after all. He had been one of those Marines. But that was a detail he had not shared with the audience. Gresh approached him as the last stragglers departed. The massive Karath moved quietly for someone of his size, his footsteps barely making a sound on the amphitheater floor. "You were there," Gresh said. It was not a question. Marcus looked up at him. "What makes you say that?" "The way you spoke. The way you watched the footage. You were not seeing it for the first time. You were remembering." Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I was 23 years old. Fresh out of training. Meridian 4 was my first real operation." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Some first operation?" Gresh sat down in the seat next to him. The seat creaked dangerously under his weight. The child in the footage. The one being carried by the Marine. "That was you." Marcus stared at him. "How did you know?" "The way you looked away when that image appeared. The way your hands tightened on the armrests." Gresh's golden eyes were steady. "I have seen warriors remember their battles before. You were remembering that moment." "Her name was Lily," Marcus said quietly. "She was 6 years old. Her parents were both killed in the initial attack. She spent 3 weeks hiding in a storage compartment, alone, barely eating, barely sleeping. When we found her, she didn't speak for 2 days. What happened to her? She's 36 now, has a family of her own. 2 kids. Lives on Meridian 4 with her husband." Marcus smiled slightly. "She sends me a message every year on the anniversary. Tells me about her life, her children, the things she never would have experienced if we hadn't come." Gresh was quiet for a moment. "Is that why you fight the way you do? Is that why humans believe in overkill?" "Partly." Marcus stood up, stretching muscles that had grown stiff from sitting. "But it goes deeper than that. Humans have a long history of almost losing everything. Wars we nearly lost. Disasters we barely survived. Mistakes that nearly ended us." He started walking toward the exit, and Gresh fell into step beside him. "Every time we almost lost, we learned something. We learned that planning for the worst isn't paranoia. It's survival. We learned that having more than you need isn't waste. It's insurance. We learned that the worst thing you can do is send enough, and discovered wasn't." They walked through the curved hallways of the academy, past students who stared at them and then quickly looked away. "The Valkyrie think we're inefficient," Marcus continued. "The Thesans think we're excessive. The Korath think we're dishonorable. And maybe they're all right, but we're still here. Every human colony is still standing. Every human who gets taken is brought home." "At great cost," Gresh observed. "Yes, at great cost. But we've decided that's a cost worth paying." Marcus stopped at a window overlooking the academy grounds. "You know what the real secret is? Why we're willing to spend so much? Tell me." "Because we value each other. Individual humans. Specific people with names and faces and stories. We don't think of our population as a resource to be managed efficiently. We think of them as people to be protected absolutely. Gresh considered this. The Korath also value honor. We also protect our people. But you match force with force. If someone attacks you with 100 ships, you respond with 100 ships. If they send 1,000, you send 1,000. Marcus shook his head. We don't do that. We don't calibrate our response to match the threat. We calibrate our response to eliminate it. A young Thesan student was approaching them hesitantly. She was one of the ones from Marcus's class, a quiet girl who had always sat in the back and rarely spoke. "Staff Sergeant Cole?" she said. Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Yes, I wanted to ask you something. About the presentation." Marcus gestured for her to continue. "You said that Overkill is a promise. A promise to every human being that they will be protected. That if anyone hurts them, the response will be overwhelming." She hesitated. "But what about the humans who do the fighting? The Marines who carry out these operations? Don't they pay a price too?" Marcus studied her for a long moment. Her question was more perceptive than anything he had heard from the senior instructors. "Yes," he said finally. "They do. Every person who was at Meridian 4 carries scars from it. Not just physical scars. The things we did there, the things we saw, they don't leave you. They become part of you. Then is it worth it? Ask the 11,000 people we brought home. Ask Lily and her 2 children who exist because we came for her. Ask the colonists on every human world who sleep safely because they know what happens to anyone who threatens them." Marcus smiled, but his eyes were sad. "They're the ones who get to decide if it was worth it." The student nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "Thank you, Staff Sergeant. I think I understand better now." She bowed in the Thesan manner and departed. Marcus watched her go. "You will change things here," Gresh said. "This academy will never be the same after today. Maybe, or maybe they'll forget about it in a few weeks and go back to their theories about proportional response and efficient engagement. They will not forget. I will make sure of that." Gresh's voice was firm. "The Korath have always respected strength. But I think we have misunderstood what true strength looks like. It is not matching force with force. It is being willing to spend everything to protect what matters." Marcus looked up at the massive alien. "That sounds almost philosophical. We are not all brutes, Staff Sergeant. Some of us think." Gresh's mouth opened in what might have been a smile. "I believe I have much to learn from you." They continued walking through the academy, 2 warriors from very different worlds who had somehow found common ground. Students and instructors stepped out of their way, watching them pass with a mix of curiosity and something that might have been fear. That evening, Thelvan summoned Marcus to his office once again. The senior instructor was seated behind his desk, his silver face troubled in the dim light. "I owe you an apology," Thelvan said without preamble. "I asked you to present your species' flaw because I believed I knew what that flaw was. I believed humans were undisciplined, excessive, wasteful. And now? Now I believe I was wrong. What you showed today was not a flaw. It was a philosophy. A philosophy of absolute commitment, of total dedication to the protection of your people." Thelvan paused. "It is not the Thesan way, but I am beginning to wonder if it should be." Marcus sat down across from the senior instructor. "With respect, I don't think you should change your philosophy. The Thesans have maintained peace for millennia. Your approach works for you, does it? Our approach maintains order. It prevents conflicts from escalating. But does it truly protect our people?" Thelvan's dark eyes were troubled. When the Rethvan Consortium was active, they never attacked a human world after Meridian 4, but they continued to raid Thesan shipping lanes for another decade until they were finally destroyed. I didn't know that. Few do. It is not something we discuss openly. But the fact remains, the proportional response did not stop them. It only contained them. Thelvan leaned back in his chair. Your species showed them that some targets are not worth attacking at any cost. We showed them that attacking us would be expensive, but survivable. The office fell silent. Outside, the 3 suns of the Sar Prime were setting, casting long shadows across the Academy grounds. I'm not telling you to adopt our methods, Marcus said finally. Every species has to find its own way. But maybe there's something in between. Something that takes the best of proportional response and combines it with the commitment we showed at Meridian 4. Perhaps. Thelvan stood up and walked to the window. You have given me much to think about, Staff Sergeant Cole. You have given all of us much to think about. Marcus rose to leave. At the door, he paused. Senior Instructor? There's one more thing I didn't mention in my presentation. What is that? The human colony on Meridian 4 today. The one we rebuilt. The one with 40,000 people and modern facilities and a thriving economy. Yes? Marcus smiled. The colony's main hospital is named after the Marines who died in the rescue operation. And every year, on the anniversary of the attack, the entire colony stops for 1 minute of silence. Then they go back to living their lives. Happy, safe, protected lives. He opened the door. That's why we do it. Not for glory. Not for revenge. So that the people we save can go on living. So that the sacrifices we make mean something. So that somewhere in the galaxy, 40,000 people can raise their children without fear, because they know that if anything threatens them, we'll come with everything we have. He stepped through the door. That's what overkill means, Senior Instructor. Not excess. Not waste. Love strong enough to move fleets. Love fierce enough to destroy anyone who threatens it. Love patient enough to rebuild what was broken and make it better than before. The door closed behind him.